Sunday evening across the West Midlands. Apologies, we are a little bit late. One or two technical hitches at first, but we're here now. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast for your Sunday evening, reacting to the action over not just the weekend, but the previous 7 days, if there's even more to talk about. I'm Ben Ellis, rejoined this week by Gav Longthorne, who was missing in action last week. But I'm told, Gav, that you're feeling much better now.
Yeah, feeling much better. Obviously scheduling conflicts a week before from the Wolves game, travelling back, and then last Sunday, unfortunately, tested positive for COVID. I feel a lot better now. Well, was rough at the time, but I do feel a lot better now. I'm glad to be back on. I was hoping to be back on under winning circumstances, but
wow,
yeah.
This is where we're going to begin today here on the West Midlands Football Podcast. We are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We welcome your views as well. But we're going to start with Wolves because it's obviously a 2-0 defeat at home to Crystal Palace on Saturday, but it's the third in a string of defeats. Have the wheels come off at the wrong time of the season, Gav?
Obviously, I wasn't here to give my feedback and give more reaction to the West Ham game and the Arsenal game on the Thursday night that preceded it last week. The West Ham game was very disappointing, and yesterday, I think, is by far the winner for the worst performance this season, easily. I was not alarmed, but I think you read a lot into what the manager's mentality is from what he said on Friday afternoon in the press conference, basically coming out and saying that he'd be happy if they finished 8th this season. I mean, I wouldn't say no because I think that's exceeding expectations from the start of the season anyway. But I think reading between the lines, that tells you a lot into what the thinking is. The first half yesterday was just no game plan. Didn't understand it at all. I'm really confused why Jimenez didn't start, especially after being left out against West Ham. I could see what he was trying to do from the lineup, but when he took shape and he was watching the first 5 or 10 minutes, it just didn't look like it was going to work. It never looked like it was going to work. And it was just very underwhelming. Very underwhelming. If you didn't know what the date was, you'd swear blind it was the 4th or the 11th of May from the way that they were playing, really. I think it had that volume. And credit to Crystal Palace, they went there with the plan and it worked for them, but I think Wolves made it very easy. It's very disappointing, really. I think there's a few points that I noticed, especially in the West Ham game as well, which I couldn't react to. I noticed it like yesterday in the first half as well. I think they've got to start getting away from this back three now. I think it's a safety blanket for them, if that makes sense. I think a lot of the play seems to be coming through there, where really you should have stronger midfielders. Neves does a really good job. But I think Martino's in his twilight of his career now, and Dendoncker, for me, would have been gone in the summer just gone. I just don't get it. And there's just a few things there that I think the manager's got to have a good think about in the summer. And I think there's a couple of things there that he's got to action, really. He came out and publicly criticised Keanu Hoover yesterday as well, even though he went off injured. I think if he did go off injured, then wish him a speedy recovery. But from what I've saw so far, I'm not really impressed. And I think the manager was more than warranted in doing it. And I think, to be fair to the manager, came out after the game as well and held his hands up, took responsibility and said that the 90 minutes that they put out there wasn't good enough. And it certainly wasn't.
Take it back for the 3 games in question. I genuinely, having watched it because it was on the old Amazon Prime, wasn't it? I genuinely thought Wolves were unlucky at Arsenal in the 2-1. I thought they were dreadful against West Ham in what was billed as a big game between two teams that were going for European places, and I couldn't figure out the team selection from Bruno Lage for that game, and it just seems that it's carried over into the home game against Crystal Palace as well. And you know, they've not been prolific in front of goal all season, have Wolves. I mean, we know that. We know where they need to strengthen in the summer. That is absolutely for sure. But when they start letting in really poor goals, like they did at West Ham, I thought the Antonio goal at West Ham was dreadful defending, quite frankly.
Yeah.
You know, if they start letting in poor goals and they're not scoring many, then they're going to sort of end up on a slippery slope. I also think, Gavin, I'd like to get your take on this. It's coming back to bite them from 18 months to 2 years ago. You don't pay £35 million for a teenager.
Well, yes. I mean, this is it, isn't it? I mean, when he's doing, to me, it was like he was tinkering with the team again yesterday. I think he's just trying new things out. And if the backup striker per se, if the backup striker that he's supposed to be isn't starting when he's tinkering with it, then something's wrong. And £34 million, it seems like chicken feed now to a lot of clubs, but it is a lot of money. It's a lot of money to a club like Wolves. And as you said, it's a lot of money for somebody that was 18 at the time and is 20 now. I just don't see what the plan is with him. I don't see it. I think that there's strikers out there that you could have got that would have done you a job now. I think Hwang could be that. Hwang very much reminds me of Jota in the way that he plays. I think he's got a goal threat and he's very good on the ball. But I don't see it with Silva. I think there's even strikers out there. Like I mentioned it to a couple of people a couple of weeks ago, and they looked at me like I was a bit mad. But even what did Burnley pay for Wakehorse? Paid £8 million. And he's something different from what we got. That could have been worth a punt. Yeah, it's one that's leaving me scratching my head a bit now. And there's a couple of other things yesterday as well. It's really bugged me. I think when we watched it for 20 minutes, I think Neto was nowhere near ready to start a game of football. I genuinely don't think he was. He just didn't look up to it. He looked like he was running on about 64%. And he got players that were on the bench that could have played there, which is frustrating, really. I'm not saying it's a danger because I think even if we did finish mid-table, it would have exceeded my expectations this season from the change of mentality apparently that's being made there. But it's slowly getting into danger zone of it fizzling out now this season. I think this is where it's going to go. It's unfortunate, really. As you said, you mentioned the West Ham game as well, Ben, and I think that tells you a lot about the two different teams' mentality going forward for the close part of the season. I think you're seeing a team there that let a team play, and they did, and we was a team, especially yesterday, that let them play again, and you can't do that in the Premier League, especially if you're going for the top six. You can't do that.
Well, I think with the example of Fabio Silva, the £35 million. That's what you sell him for once he's developed. You know, I don't think that's the kind of money that you should be spending for somebody who has potential, but he's completely unproven at the top level.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I mean, when I argue with people about it and they tell me, "Oh, he's going to come good," But the thing is, Ben, for me, if you spend that type of money on a player, it doesn't even matter if you're Manchester United or Man City. They have one little attribute that you can hold on to, and I'm not being nasty. I'm just being honest now. I'll never slag someone off too much that puts on the Wolves badge because there are players at the end of the day and you've got to back them. But he doesn't look particularly quick. He doesn't look particularly strong. He can't hold the ball up, and he doesn't look like a natural finisher. So I just don't see where that's going to come from. Look, if we're talking in 12 months' time and he scored 10 goals and made 10 goals and he looks a different player, I'll hold my hands up and I'll eat humble pie and I'll say, look, I was wrong, but I just can't see it happening. I genuinely can't see it happening. And as you said, you're spending that type of money on a player, somebody that started for us yesterday, and granted he didn't play his best game, we spent £10 million on in Hwang, and he looks ready now. And Fabio Silva doesn't. Unfortunately, he just doesn't. I always said after the Sheffield United game in the Cup when he played really well, and it was the best game he played for us, I always think he was prone to go out and loan someone in a championship and play every week, start every week, and actually try and learn how to play English football and then see where we are next season with him. But obviously, from what I've read as well, they're adamant that he's going to come off. So I don't think we're going to be loaning him out, and I don't think we're going to be selling him. So I think you're going to see him in some capacity in a Wolves shirt carrying on. But to what effect, who knows?
And do you also think that we talk about bringing in someone like Fabio Silva 18 months, 2 years ago? Do you think what we've seen in the last few games is the end product this season of not doing all that much in either transfer window this season? Has it now come back to bite them?
Well, this is it. I think this summer coming up now is going to be a big one. I think with a lot of financial statements that came out last week, I think They're going to have a lot more financial freedom in this transfer window coming up, so it's going to be interesting to see who they bring in. I think more importantly, though, Ben, I think they've got to look at who they've got to get rid of as well. I think there's a few players there now, and I watch them and I watch them properly. And like I say, I don't do it naturally; I do it honestly. If a player sticks out to me, I'll make a case of watching them throughout a whole game to see what they do. Like, you got players there now, like the fullback that went off injured that we signed from Liverpool, £15 million for Hoover. Sorry, I just don't get it. I would recoup some of that and get it back and control someone else. You got players there like Den Donker, with the greatest respect. It's been 4 seasons now, and it's not going to work. I just don't get it. I don't see. If anybody's watching or listening, or anybody sees me comment about it on Facebook, they're more than welcome to argue with me about it, because I just don't get it. I'll listen to your opinion, but I don't get it. There's going to be some interesting choices that got to be made. I think there's definitely got to be, if for what he's had there, the manager's done brilliant. Even if we finish 10th, I think the manager's done brilliant this season, because we were a few people's outsiders to get relegated after Nuno left. So they've got to back him now, and they've got to let him put his own little stamp on the team. I think there was players he wanted in the summer that he couldn't get, and he missed out on. And I think he was very vocal at being annoyed that he missed out on them. So they've got to back him this time and see what he can do.
And you mentioned the concern that you have watching the game at Molineux yesterday, that first sort of 20 minutes or so, getting the feeling that they were treating it like the season's over, that it's done and dusted. Just looking at the fixtures that are coming up, there are teams in and around the bottom 3 who are fighting for their lives. Well, they're going to want to play a Wolves who feel that they're on the beach and have nothing to play for if this run continues, because the run of games, Thursday night, Watford, then it's Everton away, then it's Leeds at home, then it's Villa, which is obviously a 50-50 in a derby game, then Newcastle, who are kind of climbing away. But Watford, Everton, and Leeds is the next 3. You know, do each of those 3 get a crack at a Wolves who aren't interested anymore?
Well,
or do Wolves have an obligation?
I hope the manager's got more. I hope the manager has more integrity after yesterday, and he sees that what he tried didn't work, and he doesn't revert back to talk, but he tries to play like we did against Spurs. Like, that is how we should be playing. We've got players that can do it. Also, as well, I'm really confused why Luke Cundle's been left out of the squad the last couple of games after he played well against Spurs. I think he was worth keeping in there, but that's by the ball. I hope not. I hope not, because that's the worst thing ever. You know, look, it's horrible when you're in a relegation battle, and we've both been in it as fans. But it's horrible going into a game knowing that your team's half on the beach when you're doing it. It's horrible. When you say you've got teams there that are going to be fighting for their life. That game on Thursday night's going to be a typical scrappy Roy Hodgson game. It's just going to be like that. You got Everton the week after, who are going to be gung-ho trying to stay up. And Leeds also, who I think are more outsiders to get relegated, if I'm going to be honest. But that's another conversation for another day. I hope not. I hope not, because it'd be really disappointing, because we've had a really good season that's exceeded expectations, and I wouldn't want it to fizzle out that way. You could see that some of the players were visibly annoyed yesterday. I think it was a hard one to take, because I think the manager, for some reason, was trying to do something different, and I just don't think they got it. I think that's what you could tell from the way they were playing. Like, the plan that was in place didn't look like it was working. Players didn't look on the same wavelength. But going back to the original question, Ben, I hope not. I really hope not, because that would be really disappointing for it to just fizzle out after he's had a really good first season.
I'll go back to the Norwich game in the FA Cup, which obviously was a real disappointment. And as it turns out, if Wolves had got through that, they'd have been drawn away at Liverpool in the 5th round anyway. So it might not have mattered. But the fact that Wolves would have been competing in the FA Cup, you know, you kind of get to the 5th round and you start to begin to smell Wembley, don't you? You know, you get a good result here, and then we're in the quarterfinals, semi-finals are at Wembley anyway, and it kind of keeps you ticking along. And I just think generally since the Norwich game, the performance at Spurs was outstanding, but I thought they laboured to the victory against Leicester. a few weeks ago.
Well, we didn't deserve to win it. With the greatest respect, I didn't think anyway.
I genuinely thought they were unlucky. Arsenal, as I said, 2-0 performances back to back against West Ham and Crystal Palace. But we'll move on to other topics now. The West Midlands Football Podcast, Sunday evening, here from your local TV station. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And Gav, in the time that you've been away, it's all turned round. 6 out of 6 in terms of points, 2 clean sheets. It must be a South Coast thing that we like playing teams from the South Coast, because after Brighton last week, 2-0 victory on the road, easily the performance of the season against Southampton. 4-0, 4 different goal scorers against a team who were on a roll. Southampton, they were one of the informed teams in the Premier League, and on the face of it, you look at it, this is going to be really tough because, Southampton in form, high press, high intensity will cause problems. We'll probably give away some silly free kicks that James Ward-Prowse can stick into the top corner, which is always the case. They were unbeaten in 6 at Villa Park, were Southampton. So I was pleasantly surprised, but I was surprised as anybody at the performance and the result yesterday.
No, it was a brilliant performance. I was half waiting for a message from you to tell me to stay away because it might have been a good luck charm for you that I wasn't on. But no,
there was a different jinx to this, and it's the fact that I wasn't there yesterday. Where 2 weeks before against Watford, I was there, and that was dreadful. That was dreadful beyond belief. The Watford game. So this one I stayed away from, and hey, 4-0.
Yeah. No, brilliant performance. I mean, Southampton are one of those established Premier League teams that are hard to break down. They play some attractive football as well. And to win against them, it sounds silly because I am going, but to win against them, but to win in that fashion is very emphatic. I think it shows that he's starting to get it right there. I think, like we said a few weeks ago, and he was disappointed about I forgot what game it was. He was really disappointed about, but I think you can see what he's trying to do there, Gerard. I think you can see what he's trying to do there, but I think you're going to see it in drips and drabs towards the end of the season, and you're really going to see it kick on in the pre-season, the start of next season. But you got players there now that are talismans for you that will create chances. I don't know what goes on in the background, but if I was Villa, I'd be giving Barcelona the 33-minute for Coutinho now, because I think he's woken a little footballing genius back up there again now. Like he's really showing what he was like when he played for Liverpool again. You're seeing I
don't know how he scored that goal yesterday.
No,
I've seen it over and over again. The footwork, he's got it stuck under his feet, tight position. He's got 3 defenders in front of him, and he just manages to dig the ball out and find the net. It was incredible, really. I mean, what we've seen, we've talked about this in recent weeks, where Gerard's starting to get a handle on what the strengths are of the players that he's got, and trying to get across sort of what he wants. And we'd come to the conclusion, the amateurs that we are, that Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins can't play in the same team. But Philip Coutinho and Emir Buendia can. What we've found out in recent weeks is that it's the other way around. Watkins and Ings can play together, but Coutinho and Buendia can't. And in that scenario, Steven Gerrard's always going to go with his mate Phil from when he played at Liverpool, and he's the player he brought in. He didn't bring Buendia in. Dean Smith was still in charge. So, I was watching Match of the Day last night, and obviously highlights don't paint the kind of the full picture of it all. But I sat there last night and I thought, when we really get it right, we hum as a team. I mean, it's spark. There just aren't enough of those occasions. That inconsistency is always it's going to be there, and that's what kind of keeps us in mid-table, and that's what he's going to have to sort of address going forward. I single out Douglas Luiz quite a lot for criticism. He got on the score sheet yesterday, which is kind of fair play to him. But if you're going to go Ings and Watkins with Coutinho just behind them, then you need an absolute beast to sit in front of the back four. And protect what you've got, because you've always got a mistake in Tyrone Mings. It's just the way he is, one of just one of his sort of idiosyncrasies. But if he's got protection in front of him, sort of that will help. I'm hoping it's Marvelous Nakamba once he comes back from injury, but it's a position. It's the key position that I would be looking at to strengthen if I was Steven Gerrard, because you're bringing Jacob Ramsey through, and he's making his charging runs from deep and getting involved in the action. You've got the industry and the enthusiasm of John McGinn, who gets about the place and covers every blade of grass. You just need that rock to sit there in between the two of those. And it's not Douglas Luiz. He's too pretty a footballer. That would probably do well in a better system at another club. And it'd be like, what have you let him go for? Well, look at the bigger picture. It weren't working with us with the way we play in our system. If he goes off and does something somewhere else, then fair play to him. But I just worry about if that's the way you want to go from an attacking point of view. I'm all on board with that, as long as you've got Coutinho and you've got your fullbacks getting forward in Cash and Digne supporting the attack. That's fine. No problems there. No issues there. I just worry about if it breaks down on the edge of the opposition's box against quick players in the Premier League. You could be very vulnerable to that counter attack, and that's what we saw against Watford a couple of weeks ago. And better teams than Watford will do that. That is for sure. So. I can't think of one who, if you were going to bring somebody in, I can't think of who that would be.
I'm not too sure, but they may have tried to before in Yves Bissouma. I think there was a lot of talk from him in January, wasn't there? I'm not too sure whether he's that rock type of midfielder. I don't think he'd come cheap, but it was great. Well, if you want to progress, you've got to pay the money, I suppose.
As I say, it's not names, and you're not going to get him. But I want an N'Golo Kante. That's what I want. That's what I want. They're going to get him. That's what I want. That's the type. That's the type. That
I do get what you mean, because I think you got a lot of players there that say that he's getting it right now. I think he's put goal dust in the midfield. If you have players in there that can change a game for you and score a goal out of nothing, and you've got two or three of them by the looks of it now, it's gold dust. Anybody in the Premier League will take that all day long. Any team from top to bottom will take that. I do get what you mean. I think they do need that little bit of a rock, that little bit of a person who can break the play up and stop those little attacks going on. And I think they don't come cheap either. They definitely don't come cheap either. But I think with that, like you said, you'd get a lot more artistic license going forward. I think you'd have a lot more freedom. As you say, you got players like Jacob Ramsey who's coming through, but I think he hasn't quite got to that stage yet where he's going to provide that protection for the back four. I think it gives you a lot going forward, but I think he's still got a couple of seasons to learn the game properly to play that box-to-box role effectively. But it's not a bad problem to have, having a lot of attacking talent in the team. A lot of teams in that league would snatch your hand off for it. Also, certainly would at the moment. I would absolutely kill to have someone like Philip Coutinho in the team at the moment now, because I think that's exactly what we need and a lot of teams need. I think there's a lot of teams in that league now that are going to be thinking, why didn't we just sign him on loan and just give him a go after what he showed? But I think the manager has a lot to do with how he plays, but it's another topic. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see. Apart from that in the summer, would you strengthen anywhere else, or do you think you're pretty much set to make that charge for the next step going forward?
Oh, it's a tough one, really, isn't it? I think players will leave before others come in, and I don't think that's necessarily a financial thing. I think it's just a case of balancing it up in terms of getting the kind of sort of numbers that you want. I mean, let's not forget we've got 4 or 5 very good young players who are out on loan at clubs in the Football League at the moment. Cameron Archer is doing very well at Preston, for example. Even Keenan Davis is doing well at Nottingham Forest in the Championship, and there's Louis Barry at Preston, not Preston, Swindon, Philogene Bidace at Stoke as well in the Championship. So there's a lot of good young players that they can all sort of come back, and we can see the fruits of the academy coming through, which is great. And you've got plenty of money in the bank. You know, the owners they're not Newcastle, but they're okay in terms of the amount of money that they've got. So that there's no real concerns there. I think if you, like we said a few weeks ago, I think you're going to have a lot of agents this summer who are going to be pushing for their players for moves to the Premier League with the World Cup in November, who are on the fringes of international football, who say, well, if I have a good August, September, October, I'm going to Qatar. I've got an inward chance of going to Qatar. And that could be sort of a unique selling point to bring players in. But I just think at the moment, the anomaly, the elephant in the room, whatever cliche you want to say, is that for a team that is managed by Steven Gerrard, the midfield is the weakest area of the field, and that has to be addressed because he should know what he's talking about and what he's looking for in terms of a midfield. So we move on. Leeds away, it's rearranged from these Thursday nights are rearranged COVID, aren't they? From
very annoying.
Thursday's just not a football day. I don't even care if you're in the Europa League; it's just not a football day.
No.
But Amazon Prime are in charge of when they put their games on, so it's going to be Thursday evening. There's very little love lost between Leeds and Aston Villa, particularly when they play at Ellen Road. We think back to the game in the Championship with the ghost goal and Bielsa and all that, and allowing Villa to equalise. I'll just start. I mean, we're here to talk about the Midlands football. But what do you say? You fancy Leeds? You fancy Leeds to go down?
Yeah.
Should they have stuck with Bielsa to the end of the season?
I think from what you read into, I think this was going to happen in the summer anyway. But I think they just pressed it forward a bit because they were looking like they were sinking a little bit. But for me, I don't really get why you change it now. It's not even like the player can have a look at players in the transfer window and bring them in because that's gone. And to be honest with you, I listen to how he speaks and I listen to how he explains football, and I'm thinking this is just a massive risk. This is a massive, massive risk bringing this guy in. Pardon, sorry. Now, at this stage of the season, when you're in a relegation battle, because they are in a relegation battle, and you've got teams down there. I think Burnley got 2 games in hand on them, the 2 points behind. And I still think they're going to play Burnley as well, haven't they? It's just like, I can't see them not teetering on it. I just can't. I can't see where they're going to win a game either. I watched a bit of the Leicester game yesterday before I went to the Molineux. And
well, they were better. They were better, weren't they? But again, you kind of put it into context. That's not hard.
No,
compared to what they were doing. Just be a bit tighter than you were.
You get a
Leicester got Jamie Vardy back, and Leicester got Jamie Vardy back, and that made a huge difference to them. But
I think they could have been playing till 6 o'clock on the night, and they wouldn't have scored. I think it was just one of those games. I just think they were never destined to win that game. And I can't see them winning too many. I really can't. I think this is the same problem that speak about with Wolves. I think they've got some players there that are on sentiment that have been there too long that just don't. In the Premier League, you need players that have got a little bit of an X factor, and you need to improve it when you're doing well. And they were doing well last season, and that was the time to bring a few more players in and maybe switch it. With great respect, you've got players like Luke Ayling and Liam Cooper and Stuart Dallas. They're not going to win you games in the Premier League too many times. So that's just, I think they'll be near it. I think they're definitely in a relegation battle anyway. I think it's now 2 out of 4 left. I think Norwich have gone, but it's 2 out of 4 now.
Yeah, Norwich have gone. That was a huge result for Brentford yesterday. I mean, we mentioned on the national Box to Box podcast this past Tuesday, and it sounds like I'm defending sort of Leeds United and Bielsa, but I'm in no position to defend Leeds United. But if you take Patrick Bamford and you take Calvin Phillips and you take Liam Cooper out of the side, if they play for anybody else, those teams would struggle too. So, I mean, those are 3 massive players to be missing for a considerable amount of time.
Also, as well, so I know we're going a bit off track now, but I'd just love your opinion. Do you get the Bielsa hype? Because I've never gotten it.
I said it on Tuesday. What's he won?
Well, this is it. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day about it, and they were looking at me a bit mad, but Nuno was never going to succeed at Spurs because I think he's too negative for that level in the Premier League. But for me, if you weigh those 2 up, I think Nuno was the better manager in the time that they both had.
I gave the comparison the other night, and you can find it in the archive on this Facebook page if you want to have a listen to it again. The gung ho approach of Bielsa, and I don't mind conceding 4 goals as long as we score 5. That didn't work for Kevin Keegan in the 90s, and it worked for long enough where they could sniff glory, but eventually they ran out of steam and ideas, and Fergie sussed them out, and United pipped them sort of to the title, and they never got that back again. Bielsa's been the closest thing. Bielsa's Leeds, I think, has been the closest thing since then, and it's like I hate the term second season syndrome, quite frankly. I mean, but we saw 2 seasons ago a style of play for Sheffield United worked really well, and that last season, I mean, I think it was the opening game of the season. I think Wolves won 2-0 at Sheffield United. I thought, right, they're going back down because they've been sussed out.
Yeah.
So
it's stubbornness. I don't think it's so much sometimes. I don't think it's second season syndrome. I think it's just stubbornness to adapt. I think they're set in the ways of how they want to play, and they're not going to change it. But you need to adapt in that league, or you're going to sink. Like you are. But
I didn't know, and it's sort of like ignorance with having watched football. I didn't know that Bielsa was the manager of Argentina when England beat them 1-0 in the 2002 World Cup. I didn't know.
Some high-profile jobs.
I did not know. I didn't. It's weird actually, because you go back and watch that. Michael Owen gets brought down for a penalty. David Beckham smashed it down the middle. Bielsa's the manager of Argentina, who had a lot more hair and looked a lot younger. And Mauricio Pochettino is the player who fouled Michael Owen, and he looked completely different. He had a big long mullet, long hair, looked like Chris Waddle. But it's weird, and to think of where they go from there. But Jesse Marsch, I don't know if it's xenophobia or it's just ignorant to say, well, he's American. What does he know?
There's already the Ted Lasso comparisons coming out.
I don't know.
It's not so much that with me. Like I just sat there and I like to listen. I like to listen to people, the way people talk about football, and I like to listen to how they talk about it. And I just listened to him for about 10 minutes when he'd done an interview, and I just thought, I just don't get it. I'm sorry, like I think you've changed manager for someone that's pretty much the same from what I've heard. Like, so I don't get it, but
no reason why Villa can't go there on Thursday night, and the same kind of positivity, more akin to the performance at Brighton as opposed to the one at home against Southampton. If they play like Southampton, the score could be 6-6. Quite frankly, which should be good viewing. I mean, it was at the return fixture at Villa Park a few weeks ago. You sort of might remember, but there we are. Moving on. It's the West Midlands Football Podcast here Sunday evening. Myself, Ben Ellis, and Gavin Longthorne reacting to the action and wins in the Championship. First one for Steve Bruce. Jonathan is not with us tonight. He was a dejected man last week after the he joined the National podcast on Tuesday night, having watched them against Swansea on the Monday night, and that was hard work. Let me tell you, that was hard work. He was a neutral watching that.
Painful, wasn't it?
But Steve Bruce has had 5 days with them since the Swansea game. He's gone in there. He said it cannot be that bad again. It cannot be that bad again. He's up against one of his former teams in Hull, who he's got promoted from the Championship, who he has a reputation of being a good manager at Hull. If you look for any kind of motivation that he can to take to the MKM Stadium, I think it's called now, and they come away from there, 2-0 victory. What they did, Gav, and it was smart thinking as well, is they left Andy Carroll out. Because although Andy Carroll is a proven quality player and will do well in the Championship given his age, what we noticed in the Swansea game and previous games before that, because they've got Andy Carroll up there, all we've got to do is just punt the ball long. And they can't do that if Carroll's out of the side, so they didn't. So they played more football and they controlled the game. And there was a lot of relief amongst Albion fans at 5 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah. As you said, I don't think it could have got worse than that game on Monday. I think that was, the greatest respect, it was very, like I just said, it was very painful to watch. I felt bad you can't help but feel bad for the fans that go there and watch it, because you think you've been there where you waste your time. It feels like a wasted night or afternoon. But no, it's a good result yesterday. As you say, Hull can be one of those tricky teams to play. Leaving Carroll at the team might have been a good idea. for me, I noticed that a lot as well. They seem to be playing the long ball when he's in the team, but I actually think he's slightly better than that. I think he's actually walking on the floor as well. So it's frustrating to watch it when you got players like that. It's almost as if when Peter Crouch was playing for Burnley a few seasons ago and they were going down that route, and it was frustrating to watch, but it's under the topic. But no, a good result. They needed it desperately. I think the talk about seasons fizzling out, I think that was fizzling out with the right sparkler, really, wasn't it? I mean, they went from 7th to 13th in the space of 2 weeks, and you think, oh God, oh Lord, it's going to be one of those where they're going to miss out. But it keeps them back in with a little tiny glimmer of hope again in the playoffs. It'd be interesting to see. I think under Bruce, at that level, they are going to win games. I think it's just that when you're going through a run like that, it's hard to get out of it. It's very, very hard to get out of it, and you need one of those games. Like they got a good result yesterday, but they needed one of those games. Say, even if they won it in the 95th minute and it come off somebody's backside and went in, like you just need a game like that to get back on track again, to get out of that funk. They've had a game now where they've won it, so they can kick on from there. I think they've got players that can win your games as well. Like I say, Carroll's going to score goals at that level, and I think that it's going to be interesting the last couple of months now. I think they're pretty much playing 2 games a week, aren't they, until the end of the season now. So it'll be interesting to see. Put everyone together now, 3 or 4 wins, they're back in it. They're back in it again. That's how that league rolls.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just said a fortnight ago they were gone for all money in terms of a push for the playoffs. Now they're back on TV on Friday night, and I kind of quit last week on the show that I don't know who the executive is at Sky who thinks we want to watch this West Bromwich Albion team every week on Sky, but hey ho, back to TV. Friday night, Huddersfield Town. Now, Huddersfield, if you take Fulham out of the equation, Huddersfield are the outstanding team in the Championship, sort of at the moment, and are sort of doing really well. But at home, a bit of confidence from the victory on Saturday. If they can, start well, get the crowd behind them. If they can get a result, if they can win that game on Friday night, they're only 3 points off the playoffs. Everybody else has played on Saturday, and you can put all those other teams under pressure. So from being completely out of it 2 weeks ago, they could have a sniff of getting back in it now.
Well, this is it, isn't it? I think with the top 2, I don't think they're ever going to get the top 2. I think there's 2 or 3 teams up there that for some reason they've just had their names on it. Fulham's one of them. But as I said a couple of minutes ago, that's how that league seems to roll. Look doomed and gloomed, and then you put a run of 3 or 4 guys together, and there's a slap bang in the middle of that top 6 again. It could be 5th when we talk again in 2 or 3 weeks' time. That's how crazy it goes. They need to, though. I think they need to get something against Huddersfield, and that's a level's game, because it's going to be a tough one as well, because Huddersfield are in the mix as well, aren't they? And as you say, they're playing some really good stuff. Seems to be going under the radar a bit. To be honest, people are talking more about QPR because they've had a overachieving season, talking about Fulham. But they seem to have snuck in there under the radar a little bit, and no one's really speaking about them. But it's going to be a tough game. As I say, they're playing some good stuff. But I think they've got to. There's nothing stopping them winning it. We know how the Championship works. There's nothing stopping them winning that game. So we'll see, really. I mean, how would you? If you go fast forward the clock to May, could you see them in that top 6?
I'd still say no at the moment. I still think there's 2. The problem with West Brom is there are too many players, and we've mentioned it here. It's not like we're saying anything new or revolutionary here. There's too many players that have been there too long. Have got their kind of their feet under the table, and they've got to the stage where they're in a no-win situation as a club, because they need to get rid of this dead wood, but they're in a position now where nobody's going to take them. So if they just stay, then they run their contracts down and they leave for nothing. So you're out of pocket anyway. You start again. So where do you go kind of from there? I mean, they're also, and we mentioned this with Jonathan the other night, the lad who, and I forget his name, I haven't got it in front of me now, made his debut for Villa at Brighton last week in midfield. One of these holding midfielders who could be the answer going back over old ground. But he was an academy player that Villa bought on at Brighton last week, they bought him from the academy from West Brom. Now, if you're not spending a lot of money, which the Chinese owners at West Brom aren't, and you're having trouble offloading your players for money to bring in kind of transfer fees, why are you letting your assets, and that's what they are, they're assets in terms of how that works out. Why are you letting Tim Eregbenam is his name? You know, why would you just let academy players go? You know, if you can't bring in quality players for money, they don't spend a lot of money, West Brom. Where are the players going to come from? They're going to come from within. So why would you let them go? So they do sort of silly things, as far as I'm concerned, off the field, and they've gone through various managers, players that have been there too long. So I still think they've got enough of those nothing performances in them between now and the end of the season to mean they'll finish outside of the playoffs. But the way it had been going for the last 3 months or so, back end of Valerian Ismail's time, and it took them this long for Steve Bruce to get his first win. So for them to just get a positive performance and result on Saturday, the Albion fans will take that for now. So, you know, I don't think long term they'll be looking at where they finish towards the end of the season. But, you know, tough one, as you say, on Friday night. If they can get a result, yeah, they might be back in with a sniff. But we'll have to see how that plays out. West Midlands Football Podcast on this Sunday evening, staying in the Championship, another victory on the road, this time Birmingham City getting a 2-1 win away at Bristol City on Saturday, and they look to be they're completely comfortable compared to where they've been in sort of previous seasons, 16 points clear of the bottom three. So Blues fans, if nothing else, will have their feet up for the rest of the season. They've had problems in recent weeks, Gavin, that they've had no defenders. A lot of injuries that they've had to put with, and it's cost them in some games recently. But they're back to winning ways on Saturday. Big player for them. I thought was going to be a big player for them at the start of the season until he got injured, and that was Taith Chong. He's now back in the side up front on Saturday, and he opened the scoring at Bristol City. Nico Gordon with the second goal. So as far as they're concerned, nothing to worry about in terms of on the field, which is, it does make a nice change for Blues fans. And Lee Bowyer will think, well, we're not under any pressure. I can see who I can bring in, who we can develop. They had a very good transfer window, I thought, in January, actually, for the Championship with Birmingham City. And so he'll have a good feeling that they made some good and astute signings, finished the season well, start of next season, some more good additions. You know, Gary Gardner with this sort of like technical director role that he's got there. There's no reason why next season they can't have a more positive one. I'm not saying automatic promotion, but you know, they could be one of those teams next season who could be in contention for the playoffs.
Well, who knows? People are saying they're expecting QPR to be up there, Huddersfield, teams like that we spoke about recently in the past couple of minutes. So why not? Like I said, I think they had a really good transfer window in January. Lost Dion Sanderson when Wolves recalled him to loan him out to QPR, but got a good replacement in for the centre half from Man United, who's very similar. I think Lowell Taylor was a very, very clever signing. I think he gives them something different up front. And he's going to score goals at that level. And as you say, Taith Chong coming back into the team. He's a very exciting winger. He looks a good player. I think he'll create chances for them. Why not? I think it's, as you say, the depth in squad isn't quite there this season with the defensive problems that they've had the past few weeks. But there's no reason to say, well, they can't add depth to that squad. I spoke about it a few weeks ago. I think this is just how it is going to be for Blues this season. No danger of, no danger in getting relegated, but at the same time, they're not going to be challenging for that top six. They're comfortably in that middle of the pack now. I think they'll take that with other stuff that's going on that's non-football. The club, I think they'll definitely take that, and as you say, kick on next season. They've got players there that aren't getting as much game time that could still win them games as well, like Hogan, Jukovic, players like that can still come to the team. So who's to say that it can't be one of those seasons next season? It'd be nice to see it because I think there's been a lot of I'm a Bulls fan and you're an Aston Villa fan, but it'd be nice to see a positive season there for them
Oh
for a
yeah,
change
no
for the
doubt about
fans
that.
because the
Yeah,
fans have had they seem to pick up with these owners, don't they? It's just it's a shame. And it's horrible to see because it's embedded in the community they grew up in, and it would be nice to see them have a positive season. And just say why not? Why not? Really, I think they've got players or I think when they've got their strongest team out, they've got players across that pitch that could do you a job in that league, no problem. So there's no reason to say why not. But I think if they finish 15th, 16th, they'd end the season tomorrow and just take it. Really, I think that would suit them down to the ground.
absolutely. And this Saturday, back at home, taking on Hull City, as we mentioned, who were beaten by West Bromwich Albion yesterday. And the big news, it's going to be a real treat for all Blues fans that are able to go to the game on Saturday, because in attendance at St Andrews for the game on Saturday will be none other than myself.
You are going to be impartial, aren't you?
Of course I am.
Yes.
Of course I am. I'll call it
yeah.
as I see it.
Yeah.
I'll absolutely call it as I see it. And if Blues play well, I'll say they play well. And if they're rubbish, I'll say they're rubbish. And there's, as I say, you know me well enough to know I say it as it is. But I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing them live in person this season, which I haven't yet. So as I said, I've seen plenty of Villa, seen plenty of West Brom, but only Blues on TV. So I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing the players that we mentioned that came through in the transfer window, and I'm looking to hopefully Taylor will be fit again. He was injured in the warm up in the previous game. The previous game that they had at home, so hopefully he comes back. He's had a positive influence. I like Bacuna. I think Bacuna is a really good signing.
Yeah.
The Championship.
That's one that's gone under the radar, isn't it?
There's a few in the Championship.
Yeah,
there's a few in the Championship who thought, "Oh, hang on, what are we doing there?" So I think that's good. Hopefully they can get their defenders back. It's interesting with the defenders and Blues fans. I've often heard them be critical of players like Michael Roberts and sort of when he was there, Harley Dean, Maxine Collan and all that, and then they either leave or they get suspended or they're injured, and it's one of those you don't realise what you're missing until it's not there. And if they can, I mean, Michael Roberts is probably one of the Michael Roberts, I should say, is one of the stockiest defenders I've seen in a very long time. He's a big unit.
He's a big unit. I was going to say, sort of words on that. He's a big unit, isn't he? Yeah.
So I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm actually looking forward to it. So we'll see what happens. So Villa not in action until Sunday at West Ham. So free day. Let's go and watch some football. And there we are. So West Midlands Football Podcast. We're going to dip into League Two because as we mentioned this last week. I think Michael Flynn for Walsall is a hell of an appointment, Gav. I really do. I mean, he's come in there. He's come in there and he shook them up. They had a big defeat at Swindon, but Swindon do score a lot of goals. But other than that, he's got results. He got the result against Hartlepool, result against Tranmere, 1-1 draw yesterday at Barrow. And Barrow are no mugs in League Two as well. So, I mean, with the job he did at Newport previously, I mean, I think Walsall got a good one.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people recognise him from those cup runs that he had. But no, it's a very good appointment. He did a very good job when he was there. He's been around that league enough to know how to win games. I think it's a slight upgrade from Matt Taylor as well. The greatest respect to him. I think under him, I think he took them. Wasn't there for like a massive amount of time, but I think he took them as far as he could, really. I don't think there was much more he could have done. I think he hit his ceiling a bit, which is a shame because it is nice to see ex-players actually do well in these roles, but that's by the ball, really. It's good to see them picking up results and keeping it ticking over, really, because it's tough league. People talk about the Championship, but League Two is a doozy when you get in there, and League One's the same. It's hard to keep it ticking over, and as you say, I think they've got someone there that's it's been around that league enough to know how to win games, as I said previously, and it's not a bad appointment. Not a bad appointment at all.
Absolutely. So it's the West Midlands Football Podcast, but we would not be doing our duty as broadcasters and people who love our sport if we weren't to mention the still shocking news of the passing of Shane Warne on Friday. I'm still a bit kind of is this actually real, Gav? Because it's interesting with Shane Warne, and I say we're a football podcast, and what you're talking about cricket for. But this was a guy who transcended that sport, and I think will go down as one of the top 10 global sporting icons of all time. I would put Shane Warne up there with the likes of a Muhammad Ali and a Pele and a Billie Jean King and people like that, because he was just special. Would be the word. 708 test wickets, record test wicket taker against England. Cheers, mate. And all of that, but made sort of leg spin fashionable again, and it's just so sad.
It was weird seeing it on Friday when I saw the news, because it sounds weird, but I was in an hour and about buying his autobiography literally 20 minutes before the news broke, and then I saw it and it just felt surreal. Tough one to take. Really is a tough one to take. You hear people that talk about him that knew him, English as well, that long-standing rivalry, and he was a gentleman of a goal. He's a gentleman of a goal from what I heard. He, as you said, transcended the sport. He was a legend. I don't think you're ever going to see a better leg spinner in the history of the game. I just don't. I think he was just one of a kind. And it's sad day for sport. People say they're not fans of cricket and not fans of the sport, but
you know who Shane Warne is, though.
He was bigger than the sport. You
know who Shane Warne is. You say Shane Warne, and you go, "Oh, the Australian cricketer." Yes, Shane Warne.
He was an icon. I mean, he was he was one of those characters. People look at it now and see some wacky hairstyles and everything that you see in football, especially. But he was one of those guys. He came out with that bleach blonde hair, and he was someone that stood out, and he stood out for good reason as well, from ability and raw talent and character. And as I said, it's a sad day for sport, Ben, on Friday, and I think we lost one of the good ones. I didn't even know him, and I can say that we lost one of the good ones.
Well, keeping it local, I think the thing from a Birmingham point of view, with Shane Warne, that stands out is the ball he bowled to Andrew Strauss in the 2005 Edgbaston Test match, which pitched, as I say, it pitched in Selly Oak, and it went behind Andrew Strauss's pads and took out his leg stump, which and it was the great thing about that was as well. It wasn't great because I was like, "Oh, what's he done?" But it was like the last thing on the Friday, and England had been in charge for pretty much the first 2 days, and then Shane Warne has done this last ball on the Friday night, going into the Saturday, and you just think that's going to give them such a lift tomorrow, and it did as well. The Saturday was a great day that flowed back. But that's what he did. He just took the game, and he just changed it. And once he'd finished as well, I mean, one of my favourite things about Shane Warne is that you'd be watching the cricket on Sky, and the camera would zoom out to that shot where you can see the whole field, and Shane Warne his cricket brain would go into overdrive of, well, that fielder, I wouldn't have him there. I'd have him there, and he'd tell you why as well. And he'd go through the psychology of why he thinks these tactics would work, and sort of what they're all about. And there were 5 cricketers named for the 20th century by Wisden. Sir Don Bradman, Sir Garfield Sobers, Sir Vivian Richards, Sir Jack Hobbs, and Shane Warne. Shane Warne was the only one not to be knighted, which again is a shame, really. But that is the ultimate company. I mean, Tendulkar and Lara and Ponting and McGrath and Botham, and you can risk they're not in that five. He was in that five, and I think, it's. But the one thing I would say, and we will finish on this, I'm glad now. I'm glad now that we get global cricket coverage with like a dedicated channel. So if you love cricket, you can watch pretty much any game in any format that's going on. But when I was growing up watching cricket, you only watched England's matches, and the great players in world cricket were great players, and they were doing their stuff, and they were doing it against England. So we were always sort of on the receiving end. You put the great West Indies teams into that kind of category. You don't sort of appreciate it because you're on the receiving end of it. But when they're finished, and when you find out, like I say, about their cricket brains and the relationships that they had with not only their teammates but their opposition, and their love for the game, you kind of sort of start to appreciate them and sort of respect them more, sort of for what they did. And Shane Warne definitely did that. And the one, obviously, it's tragedy, a complete tragedy. That we've lost the man, of course, and condolences go out to his family and his friends, but also, which is serious from a cricket point of view, we've lost one of the biggest advocates for Test match cricket as well, in an era where you've got the T20 everywhere, and you've got these franchise leagues, and you've got the 100. Shane Warne embraced all of that, but he was always forthright in his but Test cricket's the ultimate, and we need to protect it, and we need to market it. But there's a video on YouTube of when he was working on South African TV for a series against Australia recently, where all the commentators were chewing the fat in the stand about what we can do to enhance Test cricket and to put it back to where we all want it to be. And he spoke so passionately about Test cricket. And I'm a complete snob when it comes to cricket. I only like Test cricket. I don't like any form of cricket. And I'm like, yeah, Shane, you'll do for me. Can we not can the ICC not give this guy a job? No. So we've lost, and that it's obviously not as tragic as losing the man. Of course, it can never be, but it's one of them.
Yeah, it's a tough one to take, but you just got to remember for us, for England, the bad memories that he gave us, that frustrating summer in 2005 with some of the balls it come out with, and it's as you say, it's a sad, and it's a shame. It's a big loss to sport, then. Big loss.
Well, I think it's a good place to end, actually, the 2005 Ashes, because generally speaking, it was pretty much talked about. If England are going to win this series, Australia are going to have a complete nightmare of a series, because England can't compete with this great team. And England won the Ashes famously. Obviously, Freddie Flintoff's performances, Kevin Peterson on the last day at the Oval. But Australia, okay, England were on top and had a great series. Shane Warne took 40 wickets in that series.
Yeah.
He took 40 wickets.
Just said how crazy that series was.
But also, but not just as a bowler, his batting was underrated as well. In the third test at Old Trafford on the Saturday, I think, he scored 90, which kept England out in the field a bit longer than they wanted to be, which meant at the back end of the game, England ran out of time in bowling Australia out a second time round. So so England could have gone 2-1 up at Old Trafford after 3 matches. So it was Shane Warne's defiance with the bat as well that was also a key ingredient into the brilliance of that series. And he will be greatly missed. There's no, you can't, and it's right. He's in Australia. He's getting a state funeral, and they're renaming one of the stands at the MCG after him. They say you can't give a knighthood posthumously. I think that's a load of rubbish. I think you should be able to do that. Quite frankly. But not just cricket, not just Australian sport, global sport. There will never be another Shane Warne.
Yeah.
And on that, I think we better leave it there. The Box to Box podcast taking a national view. There might be some more Shane Warne in that, even though it's football. I know we spent 10 minutes talking about cricket there, but I thought,
I don't think you could have not spoken about it, Ben.
No, I don't. I think you're right. So the Box to Box podcast, all being well, Tuesday on our Facebook page, and again, all being well, next Sunday, we will be back with you with the West Midlands Football Podcast. For Gav Longthorne and myself, Ben Ellis, enjoy your football, and we will see you next week.